Shalom Khavrim, welcome to this week's Torah portion, the Shiur. So glad to be with all of y'all. So glad to come again and to share, right? We are still in the book of Bereshit. We are still trying to carve out a more refined understanding of what Bereshit is all about. And slowly now, after Abraham and the story of Yitzhak and Toldot, we are coming into the fullness of the formation of Israel. So, so what we basically have to understand is that finally, after the third generation, in this third generation from Abraham, Father God is finally forming Israel on this earth. And Parashat Vayetzei is a stepping stone to know the role and essence of what Israel is supposed to be and do on earth. Okay? So please turn with me to Parashat Vayetzei, chapter 28, and we will start from verse 20, no, verse 10 onwards. Sorry. Yeah, verse 10 onwards. Okay. And by now I hope everybody's got a Hebrew Bible with them. I'm sure everyone's gotten at least an online version of the Hebrew Bible. If you all do not have, I urge each one of you all to please go to Amazon or go to Art Scroll and to please buy a Hebrew JPS Bible. Very, very important. Going forward, it's going to be very critical for each one of you all to have a Hebrew Bible, a Tanakh, and also a dictionary, so you all can be able to do your own studies. Okay, so let's get to the Pasha topic in hand. Verse 10 in Vayetzei. Now, just as a recap, Yaakov is finally leaving the land of Israel, and his mother packs him up, okay, and gives him and tells him, "You better go live with my brother Lavan, and stay there till everything cools down, till everything works out here, and your brother is not angry with you anymore. So till the time you are out of the Israel, it's let me sort things out here." Anyway, so Yaakov leaves, and he leaves Beersheba. Okay, he leaves Beersheba, and now he's exiting from Israel. So we read out here, Vayetzei Yaakov mi Be'er Shava Vayelen Harana, and he moved and he traveled towards Harana. And then it says a very interesting verse after that. It says, Vayifga bamakom vayalech sham hi ba hashamesh vayichak me avne hamakom vayishem merastav vayishakav bamakom hahu. Now you all must have listened that the word makom is used 3 times in this one sentence. 3 times in this one sentence. Verse 11. And whenever I've said before, whenever something is repeated, what is makom? Whenever word is, I'm on the computer. Whenever a word is released, is used 3 times in a verse, there's something very, very important. So there is an emphasis on that word. Okay, and this word makom we studied before is called place, a very specific place. But there's another word out here, it's called vaifga. Vaifga. And the word vaifga could mean a couple of things in the Hebrew. One, it could mean to encounter. One, it could mean to experience. Another way of looking at this word vaifga, it could mean to afflict, to be afflicted. That means to touch. The most common use of this word is to touch. But touch not in the way of a healthy touch. It could be a touch of affliction. Okay, it also could mean uh, to plead in a certain way or to intercede in a certain way. Now, God uses these words of intercede and plead, you know, in the book of Jeremiah, in the book of Job, book of Isaiah. But when we're looking at this word Vaifga, okay, in this context, in this Parsha, it means that Yaakov encountered this place. He experienced this place, okay. That means the understanding, the contextual understanding of this place, he's not talking about only a geographical location. He is traveling, he is tired, he laid down his head and he experienced something. Now Yaakov said, okay, this place now that I've experienced Yaivga, if we want to use Vaivga in all its other ways of interpretation, in terms of affliction, what has this place done to him? In terms of intercession, what was Yaakov doing in the evening? Now, if I want to look at it from a point of intercession, as a point of prayer, so a couple of the sages said, yes, Yaakov was praying. He was praying, right? He was praying. So Yavga means to touch something in prayer, to touch this place through or via the mode of prayer. This is in the evening as the sun sets down. So we are talking about Mariv prayer, the evening prayer, right? Yitzhak is referred to as prayer because the afternoon had got over and it was in the evening. So Yitzhak is said to encourage or inculcate the habit of the afternoon prayer, the Mincha prayer. And Abraham, it said, Abraham rose early in the morning, okay, to do whatever he had to do in several occasions as we read in the Bible. So Abraham, it said that he inculcated the habit of morning prayer. So between the three fathers, between the Yavot, you have Abraham with the morning prayer, you have Yitzchak with the afternoon prayer, and you have Yaakov with the evening prayer. So therefore, it is embedded in the Jewish culture that there are three times of prayer: afternoon, morning, and evening. Okay, or evening, morning, and afternoon. Okay, to put in the right order. So if I want to look at Yavga in terms of prayer or intercession or pleading, it could mean that Yaakov was tired with his life of what happened previously in the previous days with his brother and the entire incident which happened, and he had to leave and come out. So either his heart was breaking for the situation, he was praying in his heart, he was interceding for his brother or for himself or whoever he was interceding for. And contextually, when he was doing that, then obviously, okay, something happened and he encountered this place. Now, please note this place, when we're reading the word makom, place, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a geographical location. Okay, it is more spiritual in nature, like his father Abraham, because Abraham was not looking for a geographical place. We notice that even Abraham was roaming about from place, from Bethel to Ai, to Egypt, to Philistia, to Beersheba, to Kiryat Arba, and he was roaming about all over the place, the Negev basically. Why? Because each place he went to, he said, probably the presence of God is here. Probably the Shekinah glory of God is here. And wherever God spoke to him and God revealed himself to him, he built an altar and he said, okay, I'm going to worship God out here. So what was Avram looking for? He was looking for the presence of God on earth. He was looking for the place that something's going to happen and where God can now finally come and rest with us on earth, and God can be a part of humanity, walking with humanity and So that's very messianic in his outlook, very forward and prophetic in his outlook. It never happened in the time of Abraham. Neither did it happen in the time of Yitzhak, because the rectification was not complete. But let's look at the life of Yaakov, because Yaakov now represents something different than what Abraham was. We know Abraham was the stepping stone of the formation of a people. Yaakov is the people. Yaakov is the people that God wanted to form. And now let's look, whenever we're looking at the story, look at Yaakov not as a person, but as a people. Okay, then we will be able to understand this entire context. Okay, so it says, "Vayivga bemakom vayalen sham ki ba hashemesh vayichak meavne hamakom vayashem merashta vayishakav bamakom hahu." And the sun had set. He took stones from that place and he put them around his head and lay down in that place. Okay. We looked at a point of intercession, a point of prayer for Vaivka. Let's look at affliction. The next time this word is used in the Torah in terms of affliction is in the most famous place in the entire Bible. It's in Isaiah 53, verse 12. If you can please open with me Isaiah 53, verse 12, and someone read it. Can someone read it? Isaiah 53, verse 12. Let me share this. Okay. Isaiah, where are we? Isaiah 53. Huh.
Shall I read in Hebrew?
Yes, you can read in the Hebrew, Bible.
53:12. Isaiah 53:12. Lakin ha-kalek lo barabim ve'et azumim ve'kalek shalal takhat asher he'era lamavet nafsho ve'et poshim nimna vehu ket rabim nasha ve'lafoshim. If
Yafgia. Okay. Lachen achalek lo. Lachen achalek lo. Surely, the word kalek is portion. Surely achalek lo. Where Rabbim, I will give him a great portion. Edzumim. Okay. Edzum from the word etzem, the essence. Okay. Edzumim yechalek and a portion. Shalal tachat asher ha'arev lamavet. Because he shall he exposed himself to death, nafsho in his nefesh, okay, ve'et pashaim nimna vehu kata rabim, and he nasa, and he lifted up. What did he do? Nasa, he lifted up ve la pashaim, the crimes he fagaya, and he bore the guilt of many. He lifted up the guilt of many, okay, and he made intercession for sinners. He made intercession for sinners. Lapashayim yifka. So katat sin rabbim, he lifted up. Lepashayim, and for the crimes he made intercession, okay, and affliction, because obviously because he exposed himself to death, he was numbered among the sinners. He bore the guilt of many, okay. So we're looking at, everybody's read this verse in the English, but no one has really got down to read it in the Hebrew. So now how can we read in Parashat Vayetzei, using the word Vaifga as an encounter, as a touch, in terms of intercession, in terms of prayer, and the same word used for Yeshua in a prophetic way, the Messiah in a prophetic way, that he will Yifga for the sins of Pashayim, for the crimes of humanity, for the crimes of people. Okay, so it's very interesting now. As I said, we need to look at Yaakov from a point of people, not as an individual. Okay, so Yaakov comes, takes the stones, goes to sleep out there, and then what happens after that? Vaikhalom vehine sulam mutsav aradza veresha ve magia hahashamaya vehe. So he dreams cholam. He dreams, and if you all were there, I think for last time's Torah portion, we spoke about Yara, perception, tafisa, how in Yara and tafisa that dreams is the deepest portion of perception, okay, deepest portion of chadzon, that a person is not using any of his intelligent faculties in this. Okay, so tafisa and perception, a person is using all his faculties because he is aware and he's alive and he's awake and he's using it in this reality. Okay, whereas chadzon is an augmented reality. I'm adding on to the reality that I'm already seeing with my physical eyes, and I'm seeing something else. It's an augmented reality, or you can call it a virtual reality in modern day terms. There's no problem in that. But he's having a dream now, and in this dream, he's seeing a sulam. So sulam basically in Hebrew means something that you ascend with, a ladder. Okay, and there have been many interpretations for this. Many of the sages have debated what's a sulam, what is the figurative language that is being used, what's exactly happening out here. Some have said it's the bridge between heaven and earth. Some have said it's the bridge that the Messiah himself is the bridge. Some have decoded it into a very scientific way. Said the sulam represents the human DNA, the double strand DNA, and a whole lot of stuff. But if we keep it very simple, if we keep it very at the Parashat level, is very profound. Let's take the Torah and its word as it is. Let's not get beyond that, because if we try and get beyond that, we may lose our way in understanding what's happening out here. And it says, and this thing reached the heavens, okay, from the earth, and it reached the heavenward. And hine, angels of God ascending and descending upon it. Okay, this Malaki Elohim Olamim Yordim Bo. Now notice they were ascending and descending. It does not say that the angels were descending and ascending on them. Messengers were ascending and descending on them. Very interesting. So this was a dream that Yaakov had. But how complex and what is this dream all about? And how integral is it to understand Parashat Vayetzei and to understand, as I said, Yaakov is a people. Because Yaakov now fathered 12 tribes. These 12 tribes constituted for the entire nation of Israel and all the Jewish people today. And it says, Hine, behold, the Lord is standing over him. Okay, where is that? Vehine Adonai Nidzav Elav. Now, whenever the Torah looks at this word Nadzav, it means to be stationed over somebody, to be supervising somebody, to be in charge of something, to be in control of a situation. That's the true word of Nitzav. Because if only a person standing, then it should use the word Amad, to stand. But whenever it uses the word Natzav, from where we get Parsha Nitzavim, it means to be in a supervisory role over somebody or something which is happening. So the Lord was standing in a supervisory role, that means in control of Yaakov's life, Elav, Vayomer, the Lord said, Ani Adonai Eloha Avraham Avicha Elohai Yitzchak Haaretz Asher Ata. I am the God of Avram, your father, and God of Isaac. God calls Yaakov, I'm the God of your father Abraham, your father Abraham, and the God of Isaac. Why is this? Why doesn't he say, okay, Isaac, your father? He says, Abraham, your father. We will see this now as we go further. The ground upon which you are lying, which you are laying down, to you I will give it to you and your descendants. Where have you heard this before? Where have we heard something like this before? In the covenants, the breath, and the promises that God gave Abraham. In Pasha Lech Lecha, he says, wherever you lay your foot, I will give to you as an inheritance. I will give you and your seed this land forever, as an inheritance to your seed. Now you can see all that covenant finally being aligned with the life of Yakov. That means the promises and covenants God gave Abraham is coming true to Yakov. Yitzhak is nowhere in between all of this. In fact, in the entire book of Genesis, out of I think 52 chapters in Genesis, if I'm not too sure, I think there are 52 chapters. I don't remember. First 6 chapters are about humanity, okay, falling, and then the rectification starts. Noah, about 2 or 3 chapters or something like that. Then it starts with Abraham. Abraham's got a couple of chapters, and Sarai. Yitzhak has got 3 chapters, and the rest of the book of Genesis, the bulk of it, more than 30 chapters, are Yaakov and the children of Israel. It's amazing. Really amazing. Okay. I am the Lord your God. I am HaShem, God of Abraham, your father, and God of Yitzhak. The ground which you are lying upon, I will give to you and your descendants. Your offspring shall be as the dust of the earth. We've heard this before. Same promise, covenant given to Abraham. And you shall burst forth eastward, westward, northward, and southward, and all the families of the earth shall bless themselves by you and by your offspring. I keep hearing this all the time, especially in the Christian world. I'm not sounding condescending, friends, but I keep saying this all the time. If we are saying that Abraham is where the grafting also is taking place, which is fundamentally correct, this grafting also happening within Yaakov. Because through Yaakov, all the families of the earth will be blessed. This is the Torah. We are reading the Torah. We are reading the Bible. We're not taking away from what the Bible is saying. We're not adding to what the Bible is saying. This is God's promise to Yaakov. And all our effort is to understand what it is to be blessed by Yaakov or by Israel. And if Yaakov are the Jewish people, so we cannot stand alone, separated, digressed from the covenants that God gave Abraham. Because then, if we are not able to graft ourselves into Israel or to the Jewish people, how are we going to be rectified? The two of us have to be one. How am I going to get the blessings? The common factor of these blessings has to come through Yeshua. Please mute whoever that is. The common blessings, the grafting has to come to Yeshua, because Yeshua is the one who has separated and who has broken down, not separated, broken down the wall between the two, the Jew and the Gentile. He's removed that wall. He's made us one people. Therefore, bringing peace. It says, isn't the Brit Kadashya says this, book of Romans? Therefore, breaking down the wall between the two. Therefore, bringing peace to everybody. So God has told Yaakov here, through you, all the nations of the earth will be grafted in or blessed. Same word, Barakah. Okay, same word. Behold, I am with you. Vehine anoki imad veshamartakha. Behold, I stand with you. Now he's using the word imad. amad, to stand. Vehine anoki imad imecha, okay, u shamartecha bechol asher telech ve hashevotecha al hadama hadzot ki lo e azavecha ad asher im asiti et asher divarti lecha. Behold, I am with you, and I will guide you wherever you go, and I will return to you to this soil, for I will not forsake you until I have done with you what I have spoken to you. Now let's put all this in context. Why is the Lord speaking to Yaakov all this in a dream, in a cholem? And what is the Sulam Yaakov all about? Now, the most common understanding that the sages came to, the conclusion that all the sages of Israel came to, which was basically rejected by uh, the world outside, the contemporary Christian world. They said, no, no, this is all, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, we reject what the sages are saying. But let's look deep into what the sages are saying and why they said this. And how does this all connect? Okay. The reason why God is giving him this covenant and this promise within this dream is because the Sulam should mean something. It should mean something because now Yaakov, I said, is a people, it's not a person. Look at Yaakov as a people. The Sulam is indicating the role of Yaakov, the people in this world. Understand? And Makhom, the place, is referring to a very specific place, a spiritual place, but also now the sages and the seers of Israel connected it to the Beth HaMikdash, Yerushalayim, that this is the place that God is going to put his name, and that is the spiritual place where the children of Israel or Yaakov is going to do and accomplish his role. Now, I hope you have been able to connect the dots what this dream is all about. So I'm not going to go, let's not go into the metaphysical or the mystical or whatever side of the Sulam Yaakov is. I'm not going to get into that. Let's interpret the Bible in the Parashat in the most simplest of form. Let's take it in a linear fashion and to understand what exactly is happening in the human mind, where at least the human mind can comprehend the storyline. So God is telling him all this. And now Yaakov wakes up and he gets up and he says, now I understand the role, the purpose for my life. In the Gospel of Yohanan, chapter 1, verse 51, let's open that. Gospel of Yohanan, chapter 1, verse 51, Yeshua says something really interesting. Or let's read a little more prior to that, okay? Let's read from verse 45. So to get the context, the gist of what's happening and to understand, okay? It says, and Philip findeth Nathanael and said unto him, we have found him of whom Moses in the law and the prophets did write, Yeshua of Nazareth, the son of Joseph. Come. And Nathanael said unto him, can there be any good thing that comes out of Nazareth? Philip said unto him, come and see. Yeshua saw Nathanael coming to him and said of him, behold, an Israeli indeed, in whom there is no guile. Now, everybody has completely misunderstood Nathanael, completely misunderstood this altogether. Nathanael said unto the Lord, he said unto him, he said, how do you know me? Whence knowest thou me? Yeshua answered and said unto him, before that Philip called you, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you. Nathanael answered and said unto him, Rabbi, you are truly the Son of God. Thou art the Melech Israel, you are the King of Israel. What is happening in this conversation out here? I'll tell you exactly what's happening. Why does Yeshua say, before Philip called you, I saw you under the fig tree? The fig tree represents Israel with the covenants and with the mitzvah and the giving of the Torah. Basically, the Torah is referred to as the fig tree. Nathaniel was an individual, a true Jewish soul out of all the disciples. Now listen to this very carefully. Out of all the Talmidim, he was of the most purest form of oneness with God in terms of keeping the Torah and the mitzvah. There was no fault in that man. He was of such high level that when Yeshua looked at him and says, I've seen you under the fig tree. I've seen you keep the Torah. Blameless. Now, why am I connecting all this? Because the next verse, Jesus said, and Jesus answered and said unto him, because I said unto you, I saw you under the fig tree, you believe, you shall see greater things than these. And he said unto him, truly, amen, amen, I say unto you, hereafter you shall see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man. Wow. What is this all about? What is this all about? Now, we can conclusively understand that the Sulam Yakov, the ladder of Yakov, was something that given to Yakov in his dream, telling him the role of Israel. What was the role of Israel? That in this makhom, in this place, God is going to establish his name. He's going to establish the Beit HaMikdash. And in that Beit HaMikdash, the role of the children of Israel would be to intercede for the nations, to intercede for humanity. And that's where they are going to be able to keep the mitzvah, the commandments, the system, the sacrificial system, everything connected to Beit HaMikdash, to the temple in Yerushalayim, will be happening. That is why now you can see when Yeshua is looking at Nathaniel and he says, Nathaniel, profoundly in purity of keeping the mitzvah, he says, I seen you under the fig tree. And then he refers to saying that henceforth you will see the heavens open and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man. So now we also understand that the Sulam Yakov represents Messiah in a certain spiritual way that we cannot basically delve into, we don't have the full understanding of. But it also represents the Torah. Now, what happened in the Beit HaMikdash? Does anyone know what happened in the Beit HaMikdash? As and when the sacrifices were on, and the oil offerings were put on, the khatat offerings were put on, and the peace offerings were given, mystical things were happening in the temple. We don't know about it. But if you read the sages, they will tell you all these mystical things. Do you know, once we come to Leviticus, I will open up the other scriptures and I will show you all in the book of Ezekiel, also connecting the book of Ezekiel, how when the sacrifices were on the altar of on the Mizbeach, the fire of God would descend on that altar in a form of a lion, and it would consume the sacrifices many a time. It was a very holy place, an extremely holy place. And that holy place now is what Yaakov is, Vayetzei, is experiencing. He's seen what his seed is going to go through. He's seen the affliction, and he's seen also how the people, Yaakov, the people, the nation is going to be afflicted, and he's going to nasa, carry the sins of the world, and also intercede, Vayetzei, for the pashaim, for the crimes of his people. Are you all understanding where we are getting to? Very, very interesting. Now, if we go a little further, God says, I will return you back to the land, and I will bring to fruition all that I have promised you. Verse 16. Vayikhetz Yakov Mishanato Vayomer Aven Yesh Adonai Bamakom Hadze Wa Anochi Lo Yidati. And Yaakov woke from his sleep and said, surely the Lord is in this place. Surely the Lord in this place, and I did not know. And he became frightened and he said, how awesome is this place? Vayira Vayomer Manora. The word Nora, okay, and he became filled with he got filled with the fear of Noah. So now that tefisa, that perception, that divine light filled his mind, and suddenly his brain now exploded manora hamakom, with divine intuition and perception, and he said, oh my God, what kind of place is this? So he had two experiences. What was the first? The first experience was, it was in a deep sleep. This is the zone where it does not use the intellectual faculties of the human being. The second, now divine light, boom, passes through him. And if you all were there for last time's tefisa, Shiur, you all are going to be able to connect these dots right now. He's filled with divine light. And this is how now Yaakov is transformed. He's been lurched into a higher level of drash or dargah, a higher level, a dargah of spiritual awakening. Okay. And he says, how awesome is this place? I never knew. This is none other than the bed of God, the house of God. And this is the gate of heaven. That means he's saying, this is a portal between heaven and earth. This is a portal between heaven and earth. Because he's seen angels ascending and descending. And what are the angels ascending and descending? On this thing, like what Yeshua says, that angels will ascend and descend on the Son of Man. Angels have roles, purposes, assignments, tasks given for this earth. That means in this place, it was flooded with spiritual activity and beings. And God showed it to Yaakov. Now, in this Holem, Yaakov seen the people, he's seen his descendants, he understood what they're supposed to do, he's seen the place, it affected him, he got afflicted by it. But when I look at the point of affliction, I look that his descendants now are going to be afflicted for the world. The Jewish people have always been chased, slaughtered, killed, massacred, beheaded, robbed throughout their known history. And each time something that has happened to the Jewish people, okay, in a way, God used it to atone for the world. Please understand this. It's very, very clear. But the sins and the crimes and the pashachem of this world is so much that God could not use the Jewish people as a whole anymore. So now when I'm saying this, please understand that I'm talking about different levels of drash. Okay, so don't hold on to me and say, okay, it's not everything. This is not everything what I'm saying. This is one of the ways, perspectives of understanding atonement. Therefore, you have to have Yeshua who comes on behalf of Israel and does and completes and perfects and lifts the Torah for the children of Israel, because when you look at Yeshua, he's the Son of God. And in Exodus 4:22, God says, my son, my firstborn son, Israel. Both are called Son of God. That means God is calling the children of Israel, the children of Yaakov, Israel, in purview of what Yeshua has done 1500 years hence. God is saying something before it has been performed. So Israel is only going to be complete as the Son of God only through Yeshua. And this is where you and me also now are finally given that opportunity to rectify, to graft, and to come in. So that's one angle of it. Even when I look at all the wars and all the things that humanity has gone through, even till the last World War, the Second World War, 6 million Jews were. It's even unbearable to think and to say what has happened to them. And if that never happened, the world would have been a very different place, my friends. The world was changed after that. It woke up. The full balance of humanity changed after the annihilation of the Holocaust of the Jews. And then everything quelled after that. It was a type of atonement. But whatever happened to the Jewish people, it's happened to Yeshua. We cannot separate the two from this. So what is Yaakov listening at and looking at in this dream? He's seeing everything. He's seeing the Beit HaMikdash. He's seeing the affliction. He's seeing also the lifting of the khatat, sins, and the intercession of the crimes. Why do you think Yeshua is called the great intercessor? Why is he the intercessor? Do you know, even till today, Yeshua is interceding for all of us. Every second of the day, intercession is so, so important. If there's no intercession from Yeshua, you are dead. You're finished. You're over and done with, friends. Completely done with. How awesome is this place? So the sages put all these things together, and he said, in the future, the Mashiach is going to do this, and this is what's going to happen to the Jewish people, and this and that. So Yaakov now is filled with this divine light of understanding of what his role and purpose is in this world. Look at Yaakov as a people, not as a person. Because Yaakov goes on to say a little later on. Let's read. So Yaakov arose early in the morning and took the stone that he had placed around his head and set it as a pillar, and he anointed it, and he poured oil in, and he called the name of that place Bethel. Formerly it was called Luz. Bethel, what is Bethel? House of God. If I put this word Vaifga, if I put this word Vaifga, or Paga in Gematria, it comes to about 130, I think. Pe, Gimel, Ain, it comes to about 130, which is equivalent to Sinai. It's almost the same word. No, Makhum, sorry. Makhum, the word Makhum. It comes to Sinai. And what happened at Sinai? Sinai, Torah was given at Sinai. Okay, let's read a little further. Okay, it says, and he looked and behold, okay, where am I? I've gone a little further. And in the morning he took the stone and he placed it on his head and set it as a pillar, and he poured on all of it on the top. And Yaakov took a vow, saying, now listen to this, if God will be with me and he will guard me on this way that I'm going, and he will give me the bread to eat and clothes to wear, and I will return in peace to my father's house, and the Lord will be a God to me, then this stone which I have set as a pillar shall become a house of God. Therefore, it was concluded by the sages that he is talking about none other else than Beit Mikdash in Jerusalem. Now, Bethel obviously geographically is not the place of Jerusalem. That is for sure. Okay, but I think for sufficient amount of time during the time of the judges and during the time of Shiloh and after Shiloh, I think Bethel, a lot of activity happened at Bethel also. Okay, house of God. And whatever you will give me, listen to this now, whatever you will give me, I will surely tithe it to you. Look at Yaakov's words. Yaakov represents the entire role of Israel, building the Mikdash, operating the Beth HaMikdash, the sacrificial system, the tithing system, everything put together. And all this revelation comes in Sulam Yaakov. Everything comes in Sulam Yaakov. So now he knows his purpose, he knows the plan of God, and he gets up and he exits the land of Israel, and he goes now and he's with Lavan. And you all know the story of Lavan, right? And then he comes back, but when he comes back, he's rich, he's wealthy, and he comes back to the land. And finally, then he takes a lot of time to settle in the land, build up the children of Israel, the 12 tribes, the 12 children, and then everything happens. And then what happens upon them? Egypt, Mitzrayim. But I want you all to grasp something very clearly out here. What needs to be grasped is I am seeing the entire history of the Jewish people in these verses. And for all the contention that says, okay, Beth HaMikdash is not important. Sinai, the commandments given on Mount Sinai, not important. None of this is important. Really? You can see very clearly out here, the role of Israel. That role of a nation of priests and high priests is all embedded within the soul of Yaakov. It's embedded with the soul of Yaakov. Surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know. And he became frightened and he said, how awesome is this place? Surely the Lord is in this place. Now, when the metaphysical aspect of what Yaakov is going through is that in his dream now, he is levels of his soul are being opened up. He's touching levels of his soul, and God is opening up the innermost being. That means he's showing him another aspect of what needs to be done when the Beth Mikdash is operating. And this is the word Ola. What is Ola? Ascending. Ascending. See, in verse 12 it says, Mudzav Aradza Oshu Magia Hashmaima Vehine Mal'aki Elohim Olim Vayradafim. Bo. Olim, ascending. That means now Yaakov also got the instructions of how to do Aliyah, Ola. In Psalms 127, I think it says that the tribes of Israel ascended from there. How beautiful are the gates of Jerusalem. It is from there that the tribes of Israel ascended. So there is a spiritual aliyah that is going to happen. Everything is embedded in the Sulam Yaakov. Everything is embedded in this Parasha Vayetzei. The full role, the fullness of the children of Israel is embedded in this. The affliction, the intercession, this. You do know in Sukkot, I think we just finished Sukkot some time ago. We did, and then we also learned during Sukkot that during the 7 days of Sukkot, the the priests and the Levites every day had to slaughter 70 bulls in totality for the 8 days of Sukkot. 70 bulls were slaughtered as an offering to the Lord because of the nations. Because in God's sight, there are 70 nations on this earth. The role of Israel was to rectify the 70 nations of this earth. And that rectification was very, very important. Where they struggled and they fell and they could not accomplish, they took their own way, they rebelled against God, and whatever happened, it's humanity. Let's not look at the Jewish nation and say they are bad. No, we could have done a worse job if it was given to us. It's just human frailty and nature. So Yeshua had to come and complete it. You have to accomplish it for them and say, Father, I know they've not done it, but let me do it for them. And the merit that I have done, give it to them. This way, Paul says, it's a free gift for everybody. So here they learned not only the sacrificial system, they learned the ascension, or aliyah. They were supposed to intercede for the world and the nations. They were supposed to rectify the world. They were supposed to bear the sins of the world. And truly, the children of Israel have been battered. And each time they've been battered, the world has become a sustainable place for people to live. But we're not seeing it from God's point of view. Behold, I am with you and I will guide you wherever you go. God is, see the promise God is giving Israel, Yaakov. And I will return to you to the soil, for I will not forsake you until I have done what I have spoken for you. Now, many people think of covenant and breathe and this, and God is, loves the Jewish people, and it's only God is purely strategic. God is going to, in whatever way possible, God is going to accomplish what He has started to rectify this world. So be it. If He's using the Jewish nation to rectify the world, so be it. I'm fed up with explaining to people that, Israel does not exist anymore in God. It's not in God's plan. They've been replaced. We are the new this and we are the no, my friends. Be very skeptical when you hear these things or even entertain such thoughts. And then he names it Bethel, the house of God. For he says, this is truly the gates of the heavens out here. He goes early in the morning, and then he takes the stone which was around his head and sets it as a pillar, anoints and calls it Bethel. To lose. And then he talks about the tithes and the offerings. Isn't it not complete? That if you prosper me as a people, I will come, I will establish. God is going to hold this promise that Yaakov made to him. He's going to hold him to it. It is the duty of the Jewish people to build that Beit HaMikdash. It is their duty because their father Yaakov has promised. It says, hear the words. It says out here. It says, let me read it from your ways. Okay. Vayadar Yakov Neder. He took a vow. And you'll know in the book of Leviticus how important a vow is and an oath is. You know how important, right? We've studied this before. That if you take a vow before the Lord, you have to keep your vow. This Yaakov Neder Lemor Im Yahye Elohim Imadi Vishamarni Bederech Hadze Asher Anohi Holech Vaynatan Li Lachem Leakol U Beged Lilabesh Vishavti Beshalom Et Bait Avi Vehaye Adonai Li Leo Elohim. Vehaven Hazot Asher Shimati Madzava Yahiye Bait Elohim Vechol Asher Titen Li Aser Asarenu Lecha. And I will aser and I will give tithes. So when we look at the Beit HaMikdash, the entire tithing system revolved around the Beit HaMikdash. The produce of the land, the Shlosh Regalim, the three feasts, the harvest festivals, the Bikurim, the first fruits, right? The wheat harvest and the barley harvest, and the full agricultural produce and the wealth they generated all had to do with the tithing system of the Beit HaMikdash. Now, in retrospect, why was this so important for the land of Israel? And we've studied this when we seen early on in the book of Genesis. I think it was last year, where we kind of understood how the Beit HaMikdash is something that was the process of the Beit HaMikdash, the growing of the fruits and the vegetables and the plant kingdom and all that stuff was given to Adam and Chava. That was the role they were supposed to do in the Garden of Eden in perfection. But that never happened. So God now, by installing the children of Israel and the place and the Beit HaMikdash, is telling the children of Israel, I gave you all the Garden of Eden to do this, but you destroyed it. Now you create that same thing in the land of Israel, and you do the same thing that what I wanted to be in the Garden of Israel. How clear is the role of Yaakov as a people? Okay. I want you all to please look at these angles. Please understand what the text is saying. Because when we're just reading the text, it's just simple. We're just reading, okay, and Yaakov woke up and he had a dream and he had a Solam Yaakov, and this is what God told him, and the promises and the covenants. No. From the moment he had the dream and God spoke to him about the promise and the covenants, and the promises that God gave Abraham came to him, and he understood and he spoke about the tithes. Now everything is absolutely clear, friends. Therefore, Vaivga is a crucial and critical word out here in this Torah portion to understand. The role of Israel. So now you see, Abraham, there was no Israel, right? Yitzchak also, we were searching, okay, what about Israel? Where is Israel going to come into the picture? Now finally with Yaakov, we're saying, okay, we're getting the glimpse of everything. So now he goes to Haran, he's slogging, he's working for Lavan, right? And then he comes out from there after 21 years, and then he encounters this angel who he's wrestling with, and the angel says, you're no more going to be called Yaakov, but you're going to be called Israel, someone who's straight with God. Okay? Someone who's overcome and has become a prince, basically. You overcome because you have fought and you have overcome not only human beings, but even spiritual forces you've overcome. Okay, and now you're straight, Ishar. Wonderful. So finally, it had to take Yaakov this entire thing to come back, and comes back to the land, and then starts a different journey altogether, friends. So on a Pashat level, and to understand a little of the Drash, I said I will do a little diving into the text, a little opening up, a little here and there to make people understand. But please read John chapter 1, verse 45 to 51. What Yeshua talks to Nathaniel. It's brilliant. Now that's a different topic. One day, I want to emphasize on Nathaniel. I want to emphasize Nathaniel. When Yeshua looked at him, what was Nathaniel? What was his spiritual uh, level that Nathaniel was walking at? That's a huge topic on its own, friends. Because we're talking about the fig tree, we're talking about keeping the mitzvah, we're talking about Nathaniel being the perfect role model of a Jew. And Yeshua recognizes it. And then he says, Lord, truly you have seen, and truly you are the King of Israel. Out of all the Talmidim, Nathaniel is something else, so ignored, not understood. Why? Because we have not been trained to look in that direction, friends. So hopefully one day we will be able to do Nathaniel. Let's, when the time comes, let's wait for that. Uh, in one Torah portion, there are many sub-stories. And these sub-stories all connect one to another. They're not dislocated, they're not separate. Okay? But we don't have time every week to look and to connect one story after the other. That's very unfortunate, because we're really not able to, spend 3 hours and 4 hours and connect one Torah portion together. So we are only able to glimpse, extract, take out a certain subsection of a Torah portion and understand it. But I urge every one of you all to please read this entire Parsha. Please read the entire Parsha, and you will realize the rectification of Yakov. His entire life, what Yakov went through, the penitence, the rejection, uh, the affliction, everything what Yaakov went through is what resembles the Jewish nation, friends. Okay, Yaakov the people, not Yaakov the person. Okay, so God bless all of you all. Till we meet next Friday, Shabbat Shalom, and have a wonderful week. Shavua Tov, friends. Bye. Good night.